Before I start, how many of you know something about learning analytics? Hands up. Okay. So I hope you will not get bored. My plan is to give like an overview of learning analytics, give you some examples and some challenges. And since I'm the last speaker, I try to hurry up as much as I can so you can deserve your cold drinks. You're probably not surprised that we are living in a digitized age, and this digitalization also showed up in the classroom in form of digital learning environments, online classroom, augmented virtual reality. And in my mind, this has one important impact. And the impact is that now, using all the data what we can collect in classrooms, we can zoom into the learner. Instead of dealing with the average learner, which has happened in the past 2 centuries, so where we use this average learner to build an education system around. Now we can really concentrate on individuals. And this is a great thing. We should really embrace this. And I think this is where the impact of learning analytics is. Definition-wise, there's a very good definition from SOLAR, which is the Society of Learning Analytics. And it's called, it is the measurement, collection, analysis, and reporting of data about learners and their context for purposes of understanding and optimizing learning and the environments in which it occurs. I think it's a great definition. I have one small problem with it, and that's the word, where is the pointer? Here it is, optimizing. So I don't like the word optimizing. I'm a very positive person, so I would improve learning. But, you know, I can also accept that in some environments you need to optimize instead of improve. Learning analytics basically has 4 layers. The first layer, very basic description layers to sort of understand and describe what's going on. Then the next layer is about diagnosis. So what is the phenomenon? Why is it there? What can we do about it? And most of the applications right now are at these 2 layers. The third one is predict. So we can use this technology to predict what's going to happen in the future, try to predict. And then the last but not at least, we can try to recommend learners what to do in the future in relation to their studies. So what are the critical dimensions of learning analytics? One very important thing is that you should always put this technology into some sort of didactical or pedagogical context. And when you sort of define this context, then you can start thinking about the objectives. Like, why do you want to use analytics? What do you want to analyze? Then you have to think about the stakeholders, like who should be involved in this analytical process. Then one has to consider internal and external limitations and constraints of the process. Also the instruments what are available, the theories, the algorithms, other technology, what you want to use. And last but not at least, think of the data. So learning analytics is very contextual, so it's very hard to say what data is available because it could be nothing or everything. It really depends on the learning context. It's very contextual. But what type of data we can use? We can use, of course, performance data. These are grades, assignments. We can use behavioral data like clicks, click streams, content views, both video and or document views, social media. We can think of using multimodal data, which can be forms of videos, images, text, physiological data. There is a lot of research on that these days. Geographical data. And last but not at least, we should think about the context and start collecting data about the learning context. And in my previous work, I used quite a bit of vacancy data. So I was trying to put analytics in, learning analytics in the concept of workplace training, where vacancy data was a very rich source of information. But you can think of search data or economic indicators, surveys, and so on. So this was the definition part. So now we can move on to learning analytics in action with a few examples. So in the higher education, the holy grail of learning analytics is student retention. So how to keep students in the school. And it really worth looking at the UK, the United Kingdom, which is one of the countries leading this field, besides the US and Australia. And in the United Kingdom, the Open University has a system called OU Analyzed. This system is actually very nice because it can predict which students are at risk based on their virtual learning environment and demographical data. And also explains why they are at risk and give activities. So how does it look like? It looks like this. This is the student dashboard. Here you see the student activity in the virtual learning environment. Then here they put the student in context in relation to other students in his or her class. Here they give the gradings of his or her assignments, and here in the bottom there are a number of actions, a number of recommendations what the student take as an action. It's a very nice system, and it also open, so that all the data is open. So if you're interested in learning analytics research, I can really recommend you to visit their website and download the data and play with it. The other one, what I recently learned, I mean, I'm new in Germany, but I already know a very good example of simple but efficient learning analytics. It's coming from Stuttgart. It's from the Hochschule der Medien. And they have very simple methods to predict dropout with 96.8% accuracy, which is very high. It's one of the highest I have ever seen. And they do it on the basis of very simple statistics. So they look at ECTS points, they look at failed exams, I think in the first few months of the studies, plus they look at historical data, what the students have to submit when they apply to this higher education institution. And this is the result. It's really impressive. So if you are into dropout research, again, I seriously recommend to look at this. So after Germany, I go back to England. And in England, there is an organization called JISC, and JISC is like responsible to develop ICT solutions for universities. And they started a learning analytics project. They develop a learning analytics infrastructure for UK universities. Right now, at least 50 universities are part of this initiative, and it's growing. They invest a lot into this infrastructure, which is basically available for all users, all stakeholders of the UK higher education. It has two major components. One, the green one, is basically responsible for collecting and tracing students in their virtual learning environments. Then there is an analytics core. This is where actually the analytics happens. And this analytics core is connected to a number of dashboards like the student consent service, student app, alert and intervention system, student dashboard. Again, this is a very successful initiative. Here is the link. Please have a look. I think there is a lot to learn from this. And now I jump to TIB's activities. I will show two projects what we are working on. One is actually my project, and it's about goal setting in education. So goal setting theory and methodology are very powerful. Basically, they say that if someone sets goals, that will almost automatically improve performance without actually measuring back the goals. If you start measuring your achievement towards your goal, it's even better. But interestingly, this goal-setting theory is hardly ever used in education. And with our colleagues in Amsterdam and the University of West Sydney, Australia, we were wondering, like, why is that? It's strange. I mean, such a powerful theory, and it's not used in education, or rarely used in education. Let's set up some experiments. So we designed a goal-setting application, both for higher education and for MOOCs. And we made students to set goals and get feedback on goals, share their goals publicly with others. And we made teachers to rate those goals. So there was some sort of quality assurance system behind it. And once it was done, we connected this goal-setting app to the learning record store of the university to see and to compare how students basically learned through the period of this experiment. So the bad news is, or the sad news is, that in the higher education settings in Amsterdam, this experiment failed completely. It was really a disaster. And what happens with a researcher if there is a disaster? He does, or she does, qualitative inquiries, like, okay, what happened? Why did this happen? So we did interviews with the students, and we found out that, one, they didn't know how to set goals. Okay, that's surprising for a 20, 21-year-old. But the second surprising fact was that they didn't even want to set goals. They said, we don't need this. Why? Why do you want to do this with me? It's just extra work. I come to the university is here to tell me what to do. And I was like, whoa, this is very scary. Because once you leave the university, you will need to be able to set goals. But you don't know it and you don't want to know it. This is very strange. Luckily, in the MOOC area, and that data we haven't analyzed yet, it looks different. But I think this is a sort of warning sign for higher education that maybe we shouldn't tell the students all the time what to do. The other project is not mine. It's a colleague of mine who couldn't be here today, Ralph Evert. And it's about search as learning. He does this project together with the Leibniz Institute für Wissenmedien in Tübingen and also the Elsevier Research Center. And they want to scaffold the learning activities, what learners do while they do searching. What does that mean? Imagine that and I think it happened with all of us, that you were searching the internet for a term, what you didn't know. In this case, it's the inverted index. Then you get this page with the relevant documents. Then you click on a presentation that you read about the inverted index. And then suddenly a new concept comes up, which is called here the stop word. But what is the stop word? No one is telling you about it. So you move on with your search. Now you find a video about inverted index. You watch this video. But there is no words about stop words. So what's going on here? How can a student organize his or her studies? This is difficult. Luckily, we already have some solutions at TIB about it. And at the TIB AV portal, if you, let's say, search for the same word, inverted index, then you find a video. And all our videos are annotated based on the concepts they find in the video. So the learner can simply jump to the right part of the video, to the right section, and get the information what they want. This is great, and this is what the project wants to sort of elaborate and move on with. So now, after the examples, over to the great challenges. I listed here 3 challenges. However, I think there are many, many more. So this is very subjective. I think they are very important, but you know, some people may think differently. And the first one is, no surprises, privacy and ethics. Basically, wherever you go in the area of learning analytics, on a learning analytics conference, if someone asks, okay, what is the biggest problem of learning analytics, people will say this. It's highly political. Of course, right now we have the GDPR. Everyone is discussing GDPR at the moment. As it seems, we have to ask consents from the students. So people started developing consent services. Think about the purpose of the study, which is always very critical. And still, what people discuss a lot is the openness of algorithms, because oftentimes virtual learning environments, which are not open source, we don't know what they do in the background. And this is definitely a problem. Another problem, and what we also faced at the University of Amsterdam, where I worked before TIB, was a very complex infrastructure. So we did a study at Amsterdam, and there were 63 different information systems containing learning-related data. Some of them are isolated, so islands, some of them are connected. But it's a huge mess if you want to do research or you want to design services based on these 63 systems. because then comes the internal politic part. Who owns that system? There is a lot of gatekeeper resistance and so on and so forth. So many people ask, okay, but since you want to use individual data, is it actually ethical to use that individual data? But many other people say, oh yeah, but if we are not using individual data, then we are reducing the quality of education. Is this an ethical issue? There is a lot of debate in the community about this. And if you think about this, also, if people start giving consent on an individual basis, at the end, universities may find themselves in a position where they provide different services to every single individual. This is kind of an interesting, it would be an interesting development. And when it comes to organizations, there is an issue around organizational readiness. So my colleagues in Australia developed this learning analytics sophistication model. And basically, most of the universities around the world are only at this stage, learning analytics awareness and experimentations. There are very rare large-scale deployment projects so far. But why is that? So I have a good example. So again, in Amsterdam, when we started working on the university, first learning analytics projects of the university, we were wondering, like, okay, but how to position a project like this? Who are our stakeholders? So again, we are researchers. What do? We try to publish, make research and publish. So we did a stakeholder analysis with my master's student, and after a few rounds of interviewing like 20, 30 people at the university in different departments, he came up with this. And when he first showed up in my office with this, I was like, oh, what is this? But it's actually very simple. So this is the learning analytics project. This is the overhead, the university overhead, all the different like layers of management. This is the legal bodies, completely, disconnected from learning analytics. And these are the users, again, completely disconnected with learning analytics. Great. Okay, so altogether, we established 23 stakeholder groups. And now what to do? So starting a university project with 23 different partners internally, this is a nightmare. I think everyone who ever worked at the university would agree with this. So we decided to, again, do some research work and use the normative stakeholder theory to classify our stakeholders, our 23 stakeholders. And we wanted to start with the definitive stakeholders who had power, who had legitimacy, and who had urgent claims on learning analytics. So what do you think? How many stakeholders did we classify as definitive stakeholders? Who says below 5? Between 5 and 10? Okay, 10 plus, I guess 10 plus is the rest. And you were right. Altogether, 14 stakeholder groups were classified as definitive, which is a very high number. And I think it shows quite clearly the importance of learning analytics in a university. Of course, we had a lot of problems with the project involving all these 14 different organizations. But I think the only thing what we learned is that maybe we should start educating people, because most of these internal organizations didn't even know that learning analytics existed, right? So it's very important for the organization to learn about analytics, to feel, to touch the data and how to get around with the data. I don't know, what amount of time do I still? It's over. Nearly done. Okay, very clearly, the search challenge is that basically we have to educate our students towards skills which are radically different than what we are educating now. These are more transversal skills, lifelong learning related skills, learning will be more about informal learning. And I believe learning and analytics can contribute a lot to this agenda. But yeah, we will discuss this maybe in the coffee break. So last but not least, as a summary, I think there's a lot to expect from learning analytics. We have access to big data. For me, that means better research and maybe better individual learning. And there are many opportunities and ideas in this area what we can hold, but we are still lacking expertise and experience. And that's why I think you should all go and try out learning analytics yourself. And I give you 2 examples how can you do that. Once we are organizing a conference called Learning and Student Analytics Conference and Hackathon in Amsterdam, the 22nd, 25 October. Please come and join the discussion. It's interdisciplinary, so there will be practitioners, there will be also policymakers and us researchers. It's a very nice conference. I'm organizing it. It could be only nice. And the other one is, please take part of our learning analytics risk mitigation survey. So basically what we are doing here, we are trying to collect what risks organizations see when they deploy learning analytics and how do they want to solve those risks and make this risk, cluster this risk, analyze this risk, and offer it to the community so we can learn, we can all learn from them. And with this, I would like to close. If you need more information on this subject, I will be around after this talk and probably tomorrow as well. And if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.